Never have I truly been more frightened and horrified than that night 1 year ago. There was absolutely no way anyone had that sort of experience. I'd done my absolute best to verify whether or not that what had happened to me was authentic, or was it just some sort of elaborate hoax that had been going around through text. Nothing could truly shed light on what just happened. It all started with one strange text message I had received on some idle night when I was engaged in my studies. Now, let me begin by saying I am not a social butterfly. I'm a reclusive, studious student who spends most of their day cooped up in their room with their nose in their book or researching some occult subject or an occurrence with an unknown explanation. It had truly been a simple day with nothing out of the ordinary going on. Being an avid collector and reader of the Internet's phenomena and lore, especially with those of a mysterious or unknown origin, most scary stories or subjects float through in cyberspace. Did not even frighten me. In fact, they intrigued and entertained me. So I often found myself browsing websites pertaining those interests of mine. And one of the things I've come across was a poorly written tale of Carmen Winstead. Terrible cliche accounts of people who have encounters with scary beings. These tidbits of digital folklore were utterly laughable compared to the dreadful experience I had. As said earlier, it was an ordinary day. I had come home from school, as usual, and discovered a note scribbled down on a sheet of torn notebook paper attached to my fridge by a magnet. It was my mother, I believe. It said, "Dear, we're sorry that your father had to leave so unexpectedly without telling you. Honey, we tried calling you, but I suppose you forgot to raise the volume on your phone and didn't hear it. We had to attend a business meeting and it happened on such short notice. And I didn't have time to make any dinner for you. Your father and I left you $50 on the kitchen table so that you can order anything you like for supper. It's a bit of a drive, so we'll probably be home late tonight. Call us for anything, okay? Make sure all the doors are locked and stay safe. Love, Mom." I crumpled up the paper and placed it on the table, ignoring the money since I wasn't hungry at all yet. I did my usual routine of going into my room and spending several hours in front of my computer and my books doing my homework, then spending endless hours online doing whatever enticed my curiosity. Hours went by and I soon realized it was very late at night. When I had gotten home, it was around 5 p.m., and I had seemed to have lost track of the time while reading numerous articles on peculiar phenomenon. As usual, the reason why I spent so much time in this was primarily because, as I said before, I was not a sociable person. I often spent most of my days like this, lost to my own reminiscences and interests, and I did little other than that. Very few people had my phone number, those people composing my parents and a handful of relatives. So you could imagine my surprise when I heard my phone's message notifier. At first, I assumed it was my parents informing me that they are on their way home. Before I reached my phone, I thought it was rather uncanny that they simply didn't call me and speak to me that way. They sent me texts before, but not as often as they'd called me. Looking back, I truly wish I had simply let it be, not even dared to approach my phone. When I picked it up, I saw I had one message received. I tapped the screen and it revealed a small list of messages I've received from family members. The first strange quality of this message was, instead of a telephone number informing me to whom the caller was, there was a string of unusual characters and I had never seen before. There were a handful of letters that appeared to be recognizable, such as X, H, and Z, but some of those other characters were completely unusual. The best way I can describe is that they appeared like the runes on some ancient culture, as they didn't look like random, glitched ASC2 digits or characters at all, but looked designed intentionally, of course, not being well read in a study of writing systems. I couldn't properly ascertain whether these were the fact ancient hieroglyphs or numerals from some civilization lost to the sands of time. Some sort of little known ASC2 trick, or perhaps Or perhaps I felt an initial moment of hesitation. I meant a malfunction of some kind. I felt an initial moment of hesitation for opening up the message sent from an unknown number. Seeing as how I've read lots of scams and spam bots go around doing this sort of thing, but for some unusual reason, there was something enticing about the strange contact that had sent the message. Unfortunately, since it was on the spur of the moment, I didn't remember to look up the number or to contact that who had sent the text. In retrospect, I honestly think doing so would have been futile anyway. Knowing this, it would have potentially been a severe mistake, but driven by the desire to know to know just what the message said, I had to open the text and read it. I expected it to be some useless doggerel or something of that nature, but instead it seemed like a message written by a real person. It was not typed up formally, but seemed to have been rushed or written in a panic. It said, "Whoever has gotten this, I need your help. Something very weird and horrible is going on outside or around my house. There's really creepy fog beginning to build." I found this text very odd. What fog were they talking about? I peered outside a window and the night was clear. I saw a handful of stars that dotted the sky, and waxing glorious moon out. There was a single trace of fog or mist enveloping anywhere. Who sent this text? Where were they? Was the unknown contact even in my city, my state, my country? I couldn't figure this out, and I was just seconds away from responding when another message was sent abruptly. The fog seems to be eating my house. At first, it started out as a normal fog forming outside my window, but then it began to swallow up the whole neighborhood. I couldn't see any other houses, or even the street or my yard. As I read chilling words to the text message, I began to feel a bit unnerved. I'm not exactly sure how to explain, but I felt there was some sort of legitimacy in these words. It didn't seem like there was some sort of troll attempt, nor did I get the impression that this was some sort of eerie story circulating people's emails or phones. I felt it was original, and someone truly was on the other side of sending these texts, but I could only imagine who. I simply sat there in nervous anticipation, waiting for the next text message to arrive. I felt as if I should merely wait to see what would happen next. Despite the pleading, unsettling storm being told, I also still couldn't rule the possibility this was all scripted. The messages seemed to be sent like an automated machine. Someone typing it, then immediately hitting send, then arrived the next batch of messages, and then the text went like this. The fog seems to keep growing and was eating up my entire view of the house of my neighborhood. And it's crawling up my porch. I don't even know what it is. No one is on the streets from what I see, but from the creepy mist there seems to be some sort of noises coming from them. I don't know how to explain what they sound like, but they sound like weird animals. I have never heard I've never heard and howls and screeches and high pitched wails. It looks almost as dark as night outside, but it is night, huh? My lights keep flickering as if they're trying to go out. I am now in my room, the lights off, and now I'm looking outside and I see weird colored lights floating around the weird mist. They're moving in the weird circular motions. They look like dragons or snakes made out of light slithering around. I can see nothing outside now except for the smoke and the weird lights and the snake shapes. I feel really scared now, and I think I see the mist. I think I see the mist begin to come into my house. It is seeping in from my windows and door. It seems like those weird noises are getting louder and more terrible. I'm now in my hallway looking down the stairs in the living room. Oh my! The mist really is seeping from underneath the door. It moves almost like it's alive because it seems to be crawling on the floor, moving in a way I don't think I've ever seen fog move before. It's coming up the stairs. I think I see people inside of it. Trembling and scared, nearly out of my mind as I read his hastily typed but eerie compilation of text. I waited for the unknown message to continue their haunting experience. I was so absorbed in their surprisingly chilling story that I completely forgot to ask who they were or if I should do something about this. Then, without warning, an image was attached to their unkind message. What I saw was a horrible picture, which I still see today in my most dreadful nightmares. I witnessed a dark hallway of a house that I'd never seen before. White walls were visible along with a door slightly open in the right side, the hall and a wooden floor. But at the end of the hallway there appeared to be some sort of mist or fog completely engulfing the corridor and everything behind it. I do not know how precisely put it, but I saw outlines of ghost-like beings in the fog. If I could compare them to something, I'd say they appear like shadow people from legends I'd read about online in psychology textbooks. Although to say they all were would be an understatement. They also appeared to be made out of the fog that was starting to invade the hallway. They had long, gaunt arms and thin skeletal-like fingers. The most chilling quality of beings was their eyes. Although they lacked a nose and a mouth, they had brilliant yellow eyes that resembled the headlights of a car. I didn't even realize it at first, but as I stared at the terrifying pictures, I was screaming. The hideous fog creature seemed almost coming out of the phone and out at me. It was almost unbearable for me to keep looking at it. Another dreadful subsequent photo was attached to another message they sent, and the ghost-like beings appeared larger with their eyes glowing even brighter. There were more of them in the midst. They were swelling up the hallway and appeared to be getting closer. Then there came a sequence of pictures that seemed to indicate that the unknown caller who was snapping them was running away. Some of the photos were shaky and grainy, appearing if there was movements when they were captured. I can conjecture that the caller then fled into a room because the scenery changed into the hallway of some other area entirely. The last three pictures were then messaged to me, and they were the most unsettling of all. The first message showed a closed door in a very dark room. I could scarcely see it. The next showed a mist seeping in the front of a threshold, slowly curling up from the strange formations, and lastly, it showed these humanoid fog monsters, or specters, with those bone-chilling yellow eyes approaching, their arms outstretched hungrily. Finally, a last text message was received. They're getting closer. They're getting close now. I can hardly breathe, and they're taking over my room. The fog is pulling me in. Please help me somewhere before I die. Help. Bordering on horror, I left my phone on my bed, just sat back and stared at it, imagining the unknown caller sitting there in pure horror. Those hideous beings approaching, God knows what they're doing to him. I felt paranoia and nauseous. Fear began to take control of my thoughts and mind. When out of nowhere, my phone began to ring. I stood still as a statue, listening to my phone ringing, quivering with terror. I approached my phone and with a trembling hand nervously picked it up and looked at the screen. I saw those ghastly, strange creatures that served as the number of the unknown caller. The only thing left to do was answer it. Even though I was merely tapping a button, I felt like it took all my strength to do so. I answered, held it to my ear. At first, it was deathly quiet on the other end, no sounds at all, as it had been muted. Then I heard something so faint, so distant, that I almost thought I was imagining it. It sounded as if someone was groaning in pain, but I couldn't properly hear it more carefully to make sure that it was that. Then the groaning was overtaken by growling ominous whispers. It sounded as if a large crowd were whispering in unison, in no particular organized manner, just constant and sinister, garbled whispering. It then shifted to more ominous, terrible sounds. Sounds that there was a fierce wind in the other line that occupied it with shrieks that made me think of exotic animals in some remote and unexplored jungle. Then it elevated to a weird barrage of discordant sobbing, like something mourning or wailing. It didn't sound human. I can honestly say that right now, the more I heard these hellish noises, the more my hands began to tremble. My heart began pounding in my chest. My mind filled with evil, and terrifying thoughts as to what was making them. This went on for about 2 minutes. Suddenly, the worst and the final sound was that of a loud, high-pitched screech that made my blood run cold. Never had I heard anything like that in my whole life, and I prayed that I never do again. And with that horrifying last sound, my fear took hold of me, and I dropped my phone on the floor. I sprinted out of my room as fast as I could and sat in my living room, too frightened to by those text or to call someone. I was so horrified I didn't even know what. I didn't even want to go in my room, then as long as my phone was in there. I immediately switched on my TV and let it sit on any random channel, anything to kill the eerie silence. I sat on the couch and waited for the arrival of my parents. An hour later, I made the longest I've ever waited in my life. They finally showed up. I was so relieved that they immediately scolded me for being up so late. It was around 11 a.m. Only now I realize the time that went between text messages and the pictures sent and the phone call. But when they saw the fear in my eyes, their anger shifted to concern, and I explained the whole story to them. At first, they seemed to shake their heads and comment I spent too much time on the computer, researching silly subjects that were clearly getting to me. But I insisted that what was going on, it was really happening, and I wanted to come upstairs to check my phone to prove what I was saying. I went into my room with my parents. I felt the core of my being turn icy as I spun on my phone, carelessly dropped on the floor when I run off. Too afraid to see those horrible texts and images again, I insisted my father to pick up the phone and look at it. When he picked up the phone and turned it on, I told him to check the messages and I warned him on how terrifying they would be. When I looked at him, he sighed in an irritating tone. Imagine my shock when he told me he saw nothing out of the ordinary on my phone. Without thinking, I scurried over to check myself despite the overwhelming dread I had felt hours earlier, and to my utter horror, it was if I had received no messages from anyone at all. Everything was as it was prior to me getting those eerie texts. What had happened that night was, as I said before, the most frightful experience of my life. To this day, I have never been able to uncover who sent those texts or why they had sent them. Everything had disappeared without a trace. Was it a hoax? Was it real? I doubt I'll ever know the real answer. And something inside me hopes I never do.